Welcome back to the Chef Share video series. This week we're going to be taking a look at some of your common objectives in your basics class. This week we're going to be looking at braising and stewing, the two combination cooking methods. So with braising and stewing, this week we're going to take a look at braised short ribs and beef stew. We're also going to try to do a little bit of garnishing for you. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy what you see. Let us know again if there's anything you'd like to see in the future. Here's our pave cut short ribs. They're single bone portions and they're about 6 to 8 ounces a piece. We're heating up our pan. I'm gonna get a little bit of oil. I've gone ahead and seasoned these short ribs, put a little oil on them as well to help the seasoning adhere. Just simple salt and pepper. My pan's getting nice and hot. I'm gonna coat the bottom with vegetable oil. And don't be afraid to use oil because we definitely don't want these to stick, and we will be skimming this product and straining afterwards to get any excess fat out. And then we're gonna start our sear. We really wanna get a nice hard sear on these. And you can hear it already. I'm gonna put a few in and then get the rest in. And I wanna sear on all sides. I want to be careful not to overload my pan, so I've got a big enough pan to where I can fit all of these in there and still have a little bit of space. And we're just going to let these go until they're nicely brown. All right, so the sear has begun. There we have a really beautiful browning effect. We've got that Maillard reaction, that beautiful crusting. So I'm just going to start turning these items. I want to sear all sides. You notice that oil is nice and hot now. And we're really building the color and flavor at this point to ensure that we get a beautiful product in the end. Okay, so our ribs are browned up very nicely. I'm going to go ahead and start taking these out of the pan. I'm going to move off the heat and set these aside while I get my aromatics going. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't sear the bottom of the ribs where the rib is exposed because I don't want that tissue to peel back too early and drop these bones. I want the bone to hold on to the meat for now. So I'm just going to leave that unseared, so that when I cook them, the bones just don't fall out. I want that to happen naturally. So I'm going to pour up some of this excess fat that I have. Leave a little bit in there, and I'm going to start getting my aromatics in. So I've got mirepoix, standard mirepoix. I've also got a couple of cloves of whole garlic and a sachet of thyme and rosemary that I'm going to start getting cooked down. And we just want to start the cooking process on this chunky mirepoix. And in a minute, I'm going to deglaze this with a couple of cups of red wine. Then I will add my ribs back in, add my stock, and go into a hot oven. My mirepoix has started cooking down. At this point, I'm going to add a little bit of tomato paste to the classic pincée, and that's about a quarter cup of tomato paste. I'm going to stir this into my mirepoix and start caramelizing this down. And what this is going to do is going to add a depth of flavor and richness to the finished product. It's also going to help build up the fond on the bottom of the pan so that when we deglaze with the red wine, we get, again, that depth of flavor that we're looking for out of the finished product. So our mirepoix is cooking down with the tomato paste. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and deglaze this pan with a couple of cups of red wine. Now, the red wine is going to do several things for this dish. It's going to bring a complexity, some fruitiness, and some really needed acidity because this is such a rich dish. We do want to go ahead and cook off the alcohol. So we're gonna let this reduce by half in the pan before we add our ribs back and our nice dark stock to it. So as you can see, our red wine and aromatics have cooked down beautifully. At this point, I'm going to add our ribs back in. And we're just going to arrange those to where they have a little bit of room all around. And then we're going to add our chicken stock. And remember, with a braise, we want to fill this about halfway up the sides of our product with the cooking liquid. Try to get everything in there nicely. I've got a nice dark stock. Just gonna pour over everything. And remember, I don't want to submerge these. Leave a little bit out. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. I'm going to put it in a 325-degree oven. Now these small cuts of short ribs should take about at least 2 hours to cook properly. When they're done, they should be fork tender. That means you should be able to cut it without a knife. They shouldn't fall apart, but they should be fork tender, right? So we'll come back in a couple hours and take a look at these. So our braising liquid has come to a boil. I'm going to turn off the stove. I'm going to bring it off the heat, and I'm going to cover this thing tightly with a double layer of aluminum foil, because that's one of the big important parts about braising. Is you need a tight fitting cover, and aluminum foil is just as good if you don't have one specific to a particular pot. So I'm going to get this on, and just to ensure, as this is cooking in the oven, that it's going to hold that steam in and cook properly, I'm going to put a half sheet over it, just to hold that in. All right, so we're going to go in our oven now. It's preheated to 325 degrees. And remember, a minimum of about 2 hours on a product like this. See you in a couple hours. So our short ribs have been in the oven for about 2 hours now. We're going to take the foil off of them and take a look. Be really careful when you're lifting off this foil that you don't get a steam burn. Very carefully. And the cooking liquid is reduced down very nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do, really for the purposes of the video, is take them out of the braising liquid. Ideally, you'd want to let these cool in this braising liquid for about an hour, if not overnight. So I'm going to remove these and set them on a sheet pan, and then strain this cooking liquid out and start the reduction for the plate sauce. If the bones fell out, I'm just going to leave them in because I'm going to strain this sauce. And then we'll start reducing this down for our plate sauce. Now the mirepoix we're not going to save because it has done its job. It's given up its magic. If we wanted to garnish this after we reduce the sauce, we would need to use fresh vegetables. And we did go ahead and make garnished vegetables for these presentations. I'm not worried about cleaning them up just yet. I want them to get cool enough to handle, so I'm just going to set these aside and let them cool down. And all of this braising liquid, fat, bones, mirepoix, everything, I'm going to strain into a pot for reduction. Get everything you can out of that, because we're going to reduce this down significantly until it reaches that nappe stage that we're happy with to make that finished plate sauce. Then we're going to garnish it with some fresh chopped herbs and garnished vegetables. We have tournée, carrots, potatoes, turnips, sweet potatoes, and some pearl onions. So our braising liquid has reduced down by about 2/3. It's still a little thin, it's not quite nappe, but the way I wanted to present this in a bowl, I want the cooking liquid to cool in the bottom. We've got some nice tornade vegetables in there and pearl onions that we've blanched and sauteed. So I'm just gonna glaze over my short rib with about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of sauce. Just let that cool in the bottom. Set this aside. And let's go ahead and cut into this and see what we're looking at. Nicely braised, nice, rich, fatty short rib with that beautiful reduced braising liquid as our plate sauce. So just remember, when you're braising, it's a great method to break down tougher meats that cost less and make a really wonderful presentation out of them for stewing or braising purposes. Braising, typically larger cuts of meat. Stewing, always bite-sized.
Hi, today we're going to be making beef stew, and to get that started, we're going to be dredging some seasoned beef and some flour. And essentially what this does, it's going to help the beef brown and as well as help thicken up the stew. And when you're dredging the beef, it's important to make sure it's fully coated, but also to shake off any excess flour. So I'm heating up my pan, so it's a hot pan with a bowl of oil. And once that heats up for just a couple seconds, I'm going to throw in my beef, and I'm going to make sure not to overcrowd my pan. So I'm going to start putting the beef in, but like I said, I'm just going to make sure to not overcrowd it, because then you won't get any even cooking. If your pan isn't large enough to occupy all your meat, just make sure you do your browning in batches. And then when you're done searing the beef, you'll notice that there's a lot of kind of residue on it. This is called fond. It's essentially the caramelized drippings from the beef. And there's a lot of flavor in it, so you really want to do a technique called deglazing, which is where you get all of it out and you incorporate it into your dish. So I'm going to add in our mirepoix. And after this cooks for about maybe a minute or so, I'm going to add some red wine to get off all that fond. Okay, so I'm going to deglaze the pan with red wine, and when you do this, just throw it in all at once, otherwise it's going to evaporate real quick. And with the rubber spatula, just make sure to scrape the bottom of the pan so you can help get that fond off. And since wine obviously has alcohol, we're going to let that reduce to about half just to cook out that alcohol flavor. So now that the wine's reduced by half, I'm just going to turn off your heat. I'm going to transfer it to the stew pot. So now that everything's incorporated, the last step is to add some beef stock and to bring this to a boil. Then we're going to have it on a low simmer until it's ready. And when you're stewing, you want to make sure that you have enough liquid to completely submerge all your ingredients. So once your stew's gone to a boil, you'll notice that there's kind of this fatty scum that rises to the top. Just make sure to skim that off before you continue. And then you're gonna lower your heat pretty drastically until it's on a low simmer. And then you wanna cover it, but not completely. Once your sauce for the stew comes to the right consistency, you can go ahead and plate it up and then garnish it with your blanched and seared veggies along with some fresh parsley.
Hi, Chef Ross here. If you like this video, I encourage you to subscribe, leave a comment, and definitely click on the notifications so you don't miss videos in the future. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.